Hey Zoe,
Hey, how are you doing?
good. How are you?
No, I'm doing all right. Just trying to fish out these nests and stuff. Yeah, I completed my quest. All right, so let's see here. Biological essentialism. You said that some friends that believe in biological essentialism, right?
Yes.
So that's just that they're convinced of it. But what do you think like convinces them specifically of it?
Well, I think they convinced based on the scientific evidence that they see about sex and gender.
But the scientific evidence would run contrary to what experts and what the general consensus of experts from around the world is. The person that reads this and says that that they are like know this information on that gender is biological, um, that goes they're claiming to have better expertise than the consensus of scientists who are the very ones that collect and produce that data.
Well, Zoe, the thing is, I don't really know. Like the people I say in my statement, they are biologists themselves. So it's not like there's some random people. So I think I don't know. Maybe they have some reason for that, and they have
Well, what I would
uh,
say then is
you
I
know.
would say that somebody would have to like I would be curious if they actually have credentials or are they just calling themselves biologists. Like if it's just people that you know on the internet, like I'm always sketchy about that type of stuff because it's like I've known so many people that claim to have an expertise in whatever, and it's like they might be a student or they might have taken some college courses, but they are like not an actual like working biologist. But then on the other hand, you have somebody like Richard Dawkins, who's an evolutionary biologist, which has nothing to do with gender or psychology or the relevant fields that would require that knowledge, but he has no problem speaking on it. However, when he talked with Neil deGrasse Tyson and they brought up physics, he was asked about physics, and he said that somebody should go and talk to someone like Tyson and not him because he would not have the relevant expertise in this field. Yet he has no problem when it comes to speaking out against trans people, even though he still does not have the relevant information. Were you talking about someone like Dawkins?
No, so this, so I'm talking about, people. Well, I checked the background. They graduate, from with a degree in sexology. I cannot pronounce the word.
Well,
Um,
sexology is a largely
yeah,
discredited field.
yeah,
Thanks
I don't know,
to
or like, sex research, something like that.
Yeah, sure, but I would just point out that sexology itself is that the field itself is like really suffered because of people like Ray Blanchard that created the garbage like
Oh,
oligonophilia and all that stuff.
oh, yeah. Speaking of that, Zoe, I remember reading a book from I think his name was J. Michael Bailey. Have you heard that name? I think the book
No,
called "The Man Who Would Be Queen" or something like that.
I mean, how is it relevant?
Oh, I mean, I'm just bringing it in because you mentioned his name, so I'm aware of that term because of that book I read long time ago.
Sure, I'm talking like Ray Blanchard, right? That this guy like
Yeah.
significantly harmed the entire field of sexology because before him it was considered like more legitimized, but because of the very like work that he was doing, that was like a lot of anti-trans stuff, like he damaged that entire like field of science and delegitimized it because a lot of his peers like just published his stuff and then basically like gave him the like considered it like a standard of care for trans people for a while, even though that basically resulted in like tons of gatekeeping and lots of trans people being abused medically. So that's what my point is like you have to be careful of these things. That we have to be aware of these things because it's not just as simple as being like, well, there are some experts. It's like, well, sure, there are crackpots in every field.
Yeah.
And I would point out that even if you know someone who's like, oh, this person's a definite a biologist, whatever, the fact of the matter is he's claiming that every other biologist, the consensus of that field of science, doesn't know what they're talking about, and he and his own ego know better than everyone else. That's a huge problem for me, right?
Well, I don't know, Zoe, because since I'm not transgender, so I don't follow all the biologists. I'm aware of this issue, but I just follow recently some of them, and as far as I know about Blanchard, I don't think he's argue against transition for trans women, or I think maybe he just argued that in his his um, research on the correlation between sexual identity and gender identity are linked somehow. I think that's the only thing he argued for, but I think he support transitioning.
No, but that's not true. He literally he was the one that said that there's only like two types of trans people. Like he came up with Blanchard's dichotomy, which basically said that that a trans person, there's only two types of people that can be trans people. That either someone who is a such an extreme narcissist that they want to change their body to that of a woman's so that they can then basically like have sex with themselves, okay, or that they were a like gay man that could not like seduce other men or whatever, so they would go and change their body to resemble that of a woman, so that they could then get the straight men that they actually desired, right? So according to Blanchard, someone like me who's not a narcissist, and I am like currently like happily married to an NB person who is AFAB, I should not exist, nor should any other trans femme lesbian or a trans femme person who's not necessarily interested in cis men. We shouldn't exist according to him, and that's why he's full of shit.
Yeah, I guess I need to go back and read more on this because I know that not just him, but there was a trans woman who supported theory on what is the term you say
Sure, but
transsexual
the problem is,
type or
this
something.
is like no offense, but what you're doing is like I know I said earlier, so I try to reach people on the like from the kind of feeling standpoint, right? Where I say like, look, like people like me shouldn't exist. He's claiming that we're all like narcissists, whatever. So that's my like I'm trying to offer you an olive branch here. Say like, look, that's why we get upset about this, is because I don't like being called a narcissist or being implied that I've got like some type of like condition going on. Like I've got enough stuff going on in therapy and everything else. I don't need somebody that has never even talked to me to basically just slap a label of narcissist on me. I don't need that, right? And then on the other side, autogonophilia, he basically framed that as gay men, like basically gay perverts that are trying to secretly seduce straight men.
Oh, I think that is homosexual transsexual.
That's what?
I think that the one you say is homosexual transsexual. It's essentially like effeminate. gay men who who feel like who prefer to be with a guy, so they that motivate them to transition into women. The other type is the feeling of being sexually excited because by the feeling of having the female body. So I think they are different, and the gender dysphoria is something else. But I don't think he made a research on that. It's completely different. Um,
I know, but
you know,
all of that ended up being like bullshit. And it's like this is what I was saying. Like I don't mean to be like I don't want to come off as like overly hostile because I feel like you and I have like we've had good conversations. It's like I don't want you to feel like that I'm just being like obstinately like I'm just being aggressive or something. But we know that the stuff that he researched is not true. It does not hold water. Just like the old like scientific racism, right? Where there used to be a consensus about like the intelligence of like certain races versus others and all these sorts of things. And we know that that stuff was not correct. It's not true, right?
yeah,
Blanchard is engaging in that same type of pseudoscience. Then I'm gonna farm some. I'm gonna do some farming. So there we go. All right.
Y- by the way, so you're not hostile to me. I don't feel that, so don't worry. I mean, if you think I'm wrong somewhere, just tell me so I can, you know,
Well, not
be
well.
more
Yeah, no,
careful.
yeah, sure. I'm sorry. Like, um, I would just say like when it comes to Blanchard, like you cannot bring up autogonophilia, Blanchard, and people like that without people thinking that you're being very transphobic. Especially because it's like I know that like our conversations, like you've been in good faith and everything else, but um, it's just something that like you've got to be aware of, especially because it's like if you're talking on Twitter or you're talking to like a trans person that like doesn't know you at all, they're going to think that like uh that you're poisoning the well, that you're that you're basically like saying things to them that are very hurtful, and you are purposely trying to make them feel dysphoria because imposter syndrome, just like like writers experience it, just like professional people experience it, whatever else. There are trans people that because of the pressures that are put on us, because it's like, well, if you're a trans femme, then you have to be very high femme all the time and stuff like that. Like, I'm not wearing any makeup other than my lipstick right now. Like, I did not bother. Well, I've got my nail polish on, but I'm
Mhm.
not doing anything that like would make me present like really 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 femme. I'm not trying to look like a ContraPoints or someone like that, like, or Blair White or whatever, where you can tell that they spent like a long time on their wardrobe and their makeup and all this other kind of stuff. Like, I actually
Yeah,
made this video. It's like, I guess technically it's my face reveal. It's the first video I've made without like a mask on, but whatever. Um, that's not really like what I wanted to focus on in the stream. I wanted to start making more content because that kind of deals with more like trans advocacy and just kind of putting myself out there um, as more of like the person that I am and not just the perception of a character. And that was one of the problems that I realized with wearing the like, I love the masquerade masks. I'm like absolutely have a special interest in those masks, and I love the outfits and like all the culture that surrounds them and all that type of stuff. But I think that it can also lead to issues where people don't take you quite as serious because they feel like you're wearing a costume or something. Um, and I wanted to move away from that. So, hence, not wearing the masquerade mask right now. Um, but that being said, I think like, and I'm sorry, it says scatterbrain right now. Uh, I just wanted to make a comment. That's why, but some people might look at me and they would say, "Oh, well, you're not wearing all the makeup and you're not wearing these fancy costumes and you're not trying to present yourself as like this delicate little petite, however they perceive some very effeminate woman." And therefore, in their mind, they'd be like, "Oh, you're less trans than you normally are, because you're not like, I don't know, you're not trying hard enough to be a woman." And I'm like, that's because I don't have to, I don't like pretend to be a woman. I just am a woman. So if I just sat here in a house coat, I'd be a woman in a house coat. If I wore a bomber jacket, I'd be a woman in a bomber jacket. You know what I mean? And it's like,
Yeah, I don't know who tell you that, but I never associate makeup with a woman, even when I was a little bit like feminine than I am now. But I never think that way. So you cool. I don't know about other people, but I don't care. So I never think like that.
well, sure. I was just using the example of like, what like stereotypical, like, there, I have seen people before that will say something like, if you are not being quote unquote femme enough, then it's like clearly you don't have dysphoria or whatever else. Now, while I will not talk on stream necessarily, I don't know, I might one day share some of the stuff that like gives me dysphoria. Like, right now, I'm not sharing the information just because I don't feel like people like, uh, you know, harassing me about it, because like they absolutely would, try and like spam the information at me that like bothers me or whatever. Um,
So Zoe, so because you mentioned somebody um think that you're not woman enough because you don't wear makeup, is that also applied to the opposite side too? For example, like for some lesbian, if they are so masculine, and some do you think they will see the statement that your behavior is not suitable for a woman, so you should be a man? Does that happen from your experience?
I mean, not that like I've experienced like currently. I've had it happen before where people were basically insinuating that like I was doing something. How do you apply gloves? Man, I need. They would imply that that like they'll say something like oh, your male uh presentation, whatever, your male what do they call it, socialization is showing, if it's like you're not feminine. I can't believe that like there's no enchants. Oh, it's so frustrating. Yeah, they'll say like you're not that you're too masculine or whatever else, if you are clearly not what trying hard enough in their opinion to be feminine. And I think like that just gets on my nerves, like because everybody experiences their gender in a different way, and that there's nothing definitively that like doing certain behaviors does not make you a woman, and while doing other behaviors does not define you as a man. And I think like the the gender binary is like bullshit anyway.
I wonder if this is where the gay, lesbian, bisexual people and trans people drift apart because of because of the gender expression that I see on Twitter. You know
Not
what I'm
at
talking about, right?
not at all. In fact, it becomes even more incoherent for an LGBT person, if they identify that way, to say that the LGB without the T, that becomes even more incoherent, because The fact of the matter is, the people that would agree that, oh, well, the LGB without the T type of thing, those people, the problem with that is that they fail to recognize they are already violating traditional gender norms just by being gay. Traditionally, a masculine male person should not have sex with other men, and women should not have sex with other women. That was part of the traditional gender roles. So if you turn around and you say that, oh, well, these people are just, it's only trans people that are violating the gender roles, and we want some aspect of some gender roles, so therefore we need to separate ourselves from the trans community. The reason why that ends up becoming incoherent is because the being gay or being, being gay or being bi or whatever literally runs directly against the very the same conservative values that that gay person is advocating for, by saying that, well, there are certain gender roles that that we'd have to follow. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, and yeah.
Yeah, and you got people like, let's say, like, you got like Blair White or whatever, and you say, oh, well, she agrees that, that there are some gender roles that, like, that make sense, or that, because I know that she does not agree with, like, non-binary people, like, existing, period. The problem that dipshit has, though, it is that her very, like, the very existence of gay people, period, run against conservative values of what gender means. So, like, if you grant the conservatives the argument that, oh yeah, there are most definitely like gender roles or whatever else, and trans people are the problem, then you're also by default saying that that gay people are also the problem. And, like, I know you don't agree with that.
Yeah, I think if society accept, that on average men are masculine and on average women are feminine, but there are exceptions to rule, that's fine. That's okay. Nothing is wrong with that. If that's acceptable, maybe we don't have to see much of the war that's going on now.
Yeah, but all you would say is that on average there are some masculine people that, like, identify as men, and there are some feminine people that identify as women, because there are also masculine people that do not identify as men, and there are feminine people that don't identify as women, and there are people that identify as, as neither or both, like somewhere in between.
Yeah, yeah. I guess for me, when I see the rise of gender fluid movement, I begin to question that, is it because of the fact that the culture, the Judeo-Christian culture, has difficulty accepting the fact that, man can be feminine and women can be masculine too.
Can
So that's yeah,
can I ask, like, and
yeah.
I mean, like, no offense at all, can you connect the dots, like breadcrumb it for me? Like, we were talking about gender, and that some people can be masculine without identifying as male, and some, like, feminine. And then you brought up Judeo-Christian. Like, what does Judeo-Christian anything have to do with this?
Oh yeah. So I'm just saying that um that I suspect that the the Judeo-Christian value make the distinction between, a man supposed to behave, towards masculinity and women more towards femininity. Therefore, I guess that's why there was this the gender fluid. it's like what trying to break that stereotype and fight against that ideology. That's just my understanding of the movement.
So you don't think that those people like genuinely believe like that their genuine gender is non-binary? You think that they're only doing it to like spite like Christians?
Um, Honestly, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know because until lately I have yet seen a lot of people who want gender non-binary much. It's only like last year I began to see the rise.
Yeah, but
So
I mean,
I
no,
don't
no
really.
offense, that's just your personal perception. Like
Sure,
that
yeah.
they existed well before then, and like um my spouse, for instance, like gives no shits at all about Christianity. Like I care about Christianity, like um the negative impact that religion has
Oh yeah, definitely.
on the LGBT community. Like I would argue that like I get more riled up about it than they do. They're just like the opinion of kind of like live and let live. And I wish we could do that, but I also recognize that like that very community is of course I come up here and it spawns back down there. The Christian community is like a large source of hatred and bigotry against our community. But I don't think that I don't think that that people are only claiming that they're non-binary just to like get at the Christians. The Bible doesn't say anything about non-binary people. Like that's why I didn't really understand like why would NB people like why would they care about Christianity necessarily other than Christians condemning them, because the Bible doesn't say anything about non-binary people. The Bible also doesn't say anything about trans people either, by the way. Christians have to torture the scripture in order to squeeze out every last drop of bigotry that they can find to claim that, oh, well, it says that, whatever, like a man shall not wear a woman's clothes or whatever. And it's like, okay, but I'm not a man. And I'm not wearing
Yeah.
I'm not wearing women's clothes like as a man. I am a woman wearing women's clothes. So but they will deny that just flatly because they'll cite some type of biological essentialism, which the Bible also doesn't talk about. Like you still have to extrapolate that from these pages.
Yeah, I'm not a Christian. I have never been, so I don't care what Christian think. I just it's just from my observation that I think there may be correlated relation between people who are like defiant against this oppressive ideology. Um, because that's the way this fate is.
But would it be fair for me to say that, like, well, like, if you don't care about Christianity, then why can't these NB people not care about Christianity? Like, if somebody asked you, like, do you think that, like, all gay people are only gay not because they were actually born that way, or whatever else? Like, who cares what the real reason is for it? But they were to claim to you that the only reason why people are gay is to dig at Christians and to spit in the face of the Christian God.
Well, Zoe, I think mm, it's possible that some people try to do that just to piss off Christian. Yeah, possible.
You really think that like there's some straight guy out there who's like the most neck bearded gamer atheist ever, and he's got like Dorito dust on his like fingertips and stuff like that, and he's such an edgy atheist that he's gonna go suck a dick or take one for the team just to piss off God.
Well, you know, Zoe, I remember on the 80 experience where there was one episode that Matt what like wore like a female clothing with makeup on, you know, just to support the trans community, and I think also he wants to piss off Christians on the show too.
He was doing, yeah, he was doing drag, but it wasn't at the time, it wasn't for trans rights. At the time, it was because it was women's rights. It was because he was basically like showing how ludicrous it was. I like also that, well, man shouldn't wear women's clothes, whatever, blah blah blah. But besides that, he was also pointing out that, like the way that women were treated and subjugated or whatever, like women have to wear this. He was making fun of like gender roles and stuff that were expected like of women. Then also like saying that a masculine man cannot, wear this type of stuff, which he also did that. Like I think there was like
Hmm.
I think
Yeah,
there was multiple levels to it. I
yeah,
I know that he is a definite trans ally, but I don't think at that time he was like only doing it for trans rights issues.
yeah.
But that's a far cry from like sucking a dick in order to like prove his dedication to the cause. You know what I'm saying? Like, I
Yeah.
think that you're being a little. I gotta call you out on being like hyperbolic here, right?
Well, yeah, I have to admit that I draw the connection because of my understanding of, because the gender is a, it's a social construct, right? So the identity there maybe is legitimate, or it also maybe because the person there they feel like they don't fit in the stereotype, and the the religion say that you had to be this way, so they say that screw that, I will not follow your rule, I will
I
be myself.
I just feel like you're putting so much, like you're like if maybe like this is it's possible that this like I feel like this is once again like okay, you're appealing to the overwhelming exception. They'll say when you're talking about Blanchard and stuff earlier, you say, like, well, I've met, a biologist or a couple biologists, right? That's a logical fallacy. And it's an informal fallacy, and it's actually called like, it's basically appealing to the overwhelming exception, where you point to like only like a handful or fringe, amount of people, and then claim that this is a. I don't know, like there's 7 billion people on the planet. There has got to be someone out there at some point in time that like explored their sexuality or gender identity or whatever, and I could say like sure somebody might have done it to like because they were questioning their religion. um but I think like that would be so far in such a rare, like such a rare exception, that I think it is absolutely fallacious to even suggest that this is like what your average NB person is. And NB people are also, a smaller minority group. So it's like even among them, like I don't know, you might actually have a demographic where you might not be able to find one in 7 billion. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, actually, though, you're right. Even though I'm living in a pretty liberal area, I told you that I only came across one person who is non-binary, but they are not non-binary the way that the word is defined. Because the person was still identify with his masculinity very much. So I don't have yet really see non-binary people like your partner, for example. I never encountered actual people like that, other than on the internet.
well, sure, but I mean, like, are you seeking out any of these people? Because like I just get the impression that like it seems like a lot of the from our conversations, like a lot of the information that you draw on is coming from like sources that are outside of the community, other than like, you know, a couple of voices of, you know, trans people that might have like internal transphobia issues. Like do you ever like pull information from like somebody that you would look at as like an advocate for the trans community that's not like you know, pushing talking points that conservatives would use?
Well, I'll be honest with you. So the information I'm drawing from is from this tech researcher who wrote a book called The End of Gender. And in that she talked about the biological influence on sex and gender identities and
Yeah, but
paraphilia and all those stuff, all those things. Um,
isn't the intergender, wasn't that written by Shriver?
no, that's I think Schreiber is the no, it's a different book. The End of Gender is written by Deborah Soul. So I found her just by accident. So I got the book and I read and I checked the
Yeah, no,
yeah.
that's my exact point though. Like Deborah So is like literally one of the, she was like one of the like leading anti-trans people like for a while that like conservatives kept rolling out, and she did the rounds. She went on Joe Rogan and everything else talking about like trans people, you know, have all these like different issues and we ought to be like suspicious of them or whatever else. Like that's another person that is just an advocate against the trans community. They are not somebody who is within the trans community advocating for us.
I'm pretty sure she will advocate for you, Zoe, because you obviously have the dysphoria, and then she diagnosed that from my understanding from what she said. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that she will not. She may not be cool with the people who are like non-binary or the like gender fluid, but with you, I'm pretty sure she'll be fine.
But that I don't like, I'm not looking for like sympathy or for a like, you know, I don't want to be a pick me, or like, or do you, are you aware of like a slang what they call like a breeder feeder, right? Like a gay person that basically like says all of the right-wing talking points. You know, they're like, oh yeah, we should be suspicious of, you know, older gay guys around children and all these sorts of things, right? They are gay people that basically try and live their lives pretending to be like as straight as possible, like completely, like you would never know that they were gay, because they like basically assimilate into like heterosexual normativity like so well, right? In gay communities, the slang
Oh.
is a breeder feeder, right? Because that those are people that basically live their lives in a way that makes straight people say like, oh look, all those like really effeminate gay guys, the really like, you know, you know, like the flaming type of gay people, that's why that's offensive, is because those people are just pretending to be that way. They're not actually that, you know, feminine. And in reality, it's because of some members of the gay community that also empower that line of rhetoric. It's even worse than like just a, you know, a gay bashing straight person. There are gay people, somebody like Milo Yiannopoulos, that you know, help propagate this idea that there are some like fake gay people, or there are gay people that are only quote unquote acting that way to really offend straight people.
Oh yeah.
That's what people like Blair White and stuff do. They're essentially like, you know, the like the breeder feeders, so to speak, of the trans community, where they are actively advocating against positions that would benefit the trans community. They're, you know, going against us, whatever else. Like they're saying all of the conservative talking points, like a game of like whack a mole, um, where they are trying to like you know, get in every single dig that, you know, trans people are bad, and generally they focus on non-binary people and they're also called like pick-me's, right? Where they want the conservative community to say like, "Oh, you're a good one. Like you are a real quote unquote real trans person." It's the same reason why like those gender tests and that type of stuff to determine whether you are trans or not are all like dangerous and basically misinformation. They're not helpful for anyone, right? Because
Oh,
they are
yes, I see.
assuming. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So are you talking about the test I sent you yesterday?
Yeah, I took a look at it, and then
Yeah.
I also researched. Sure, but the problem is like if I take a test like that, it basically comes back to say like, oh yeah, you are like absolutely transgender, and you need to go get like therapy, whatever else, right? But then like somebody else might take the test, and they might answer it more in a way that is like stereotypically thought as more masculine or something like that, and then they'll get told that that they're not trans, and that the thing with like a lot of these types of gender tests like that is a lot of them try to weed out or discourage as many people from like embracing themselves and being who they really are by trying to convince them that they are not trans enough. And that falls right back to that trans medicalism where you say like if you don't have enough dysphoria or you don't suffer dysphoria, then you are not really a trans person. And I have an issue with that. That leads to lots of psychological harm to people within my community.
Yeah, yeah. I used to take that test too, and before that, sort of have doubt about whether or not I'm actually trans. Or I'm just confused, something like that. So that sort of test helped me realize, maybe I'm just different. So the result I got, it was that well, maybe you're not just a typical man, and that doesn't mean you should not transition, but just think about it more carefully. That is the result of the test, and I think the
Sure.
test would design, to probably to minimize the regret later on, to ensure that you really think about this.
But that's the point. Like the fact that if you went and took a test like that, you were already heavily thinking about it. Do you get what I'm saying? Like that's
Yeah,
like I don't think someone who is completely comfortable with their gender and whatever else. I don't think a person like that is going to say, "Oh, I should take this. I should take this this test to see like if I'm gender conforming or whatever."
yeah,
Right? There's a I like there's a big problem with that. Like if you're already looking at taking that type of test, then I think it's worthwhile to say like, well, that there might be something there. And the fact that like a test might say, oh, well, you should, think about your gender or something. It's like, well, of course. And I think like every reasonable, trans person would tell you the same thing that like, of course you ought to be careful. Like that's not just something that you would, randomly be like, oh, like, I'm sorry. But there's a whole nother narrative of like rapid onset gender dysphoria, which is another bullshit narrative. But I would say that uh, all trans people are going to suggest for you to take your time and make sure this is the right thing for you and everything else, right?
yeah,
I don't think that it's I think it's like really ludicrous to be like, oh yeah, someone's just gonna like rush through it if they don't take one of these tests. And these tests specifically are designed to discourage people from transitioning, and that's what I really don't like.
yeah. So Zoe, yeah, I think you're a great person, and I do not support you because I have like sort of what say pick me up, something like that, because my understanding of this issue based on what I read so far, and what I learned about this like years ago when I first introduced into this subject. So I think that something like transgender is something have rooted in the psychology and biology and all the stuff like that. So it has to be alleviated, and that's where I'm always cool with HRT and surgery for trans people. With NB people, I have a little bit more struggle to understand because I don't learn that in the medical literature and in the college course. Lately, I just introduced it like lately, so I think I need more time to actually understand if that actually something um, born in the person, or maybe because they are like that because some external reason.
I mean,
Am I coming clear to you?
the thing is, I mean, obviously, my spouse isn't me, and it's like I already like you're talking about the most vulnerable people within our communities, right? And it's like I understand, but your like understanding is not necessary. And I'm not trying to be like mean at all, but your understanding of them should not say anything about whether you support them or not, right?
Oh yeah, I
Like,
mean, yeah, yeah. So
and that's
I
go ahead.
oh yeah, so I'm just saying that's why I never fight with anybody. If you tell me my pronoun is this and that, I do not struggle to call them the way to address them the way they want to be addressed. It's just my internal mind that I'm when they told me there's something about them that I don't have the concept of, or I don't have the knowledge of. So I'm not sure that if something I like be cool with it. But other than that, I think they should have a right to live the life they see fit.
Well, sure, and that's what. So the thing is, like, I would say, like I feel like you're like on a journey and you're heading the right direction. I just wish it was like a, like I wish it was more of a like, yeah, I support them and I'm, like I understand that when they say this is like the way that they experience their gender, that's the way that they experience their gender. There's no other like there doesn't have to be like a debate about it, a big to do or whatever else. Like it's just like there's people's sexuality, right? If somebody tells me, okay, so I'll tell you something right now that like I think I've mentioned on my channel before, but maybe not. I'm asexual. All right, I am demisexual to be precise, which is on that gray spectrum. I've never told someone that I was demisexual and have them turn around and be like, oh, I need proof of that, or oh no, you're not, or oh, I don't see biologically how you could possibly be like asexual, right? Or demi. People just accept it.
Hmm.
I don't see why there's gender, which is just another part of the internal construct of your identity. I don't see why when somebody reports to you that they have this gender, that they experience gender in some kind of way that is just different from the way that you experience it, that we would say that it's okay to totally like deny this person like their pronouns or whatever, just because we can't necessarily, and I'm using we as in like just like a person, like like just because one might not understand where these people are coming from with their pronouns, that does not mean that we should be disrespectful or that we should treat them like flippantly or be like, well, until they can like prove to me that there's an NB gene or something, I'm not going to accept it. When we don't apply that standard to any other part of the human experience.
Yeah, I always err on the side of kindness. So I never struggle, with with that community at all. Um, yeah, so I when I'm telling you these things, it's just that I guess my internal wrestling with the this identity because I'm never aware of that, and
Right, but
that's why I'm yeah.
what whenever you whenever you cite sources to me, the sources that you're citing is what worries me. It's because I know that you're being exposed to people like Blanchard. I know that you're reading Deborah So. You've told me that you watch Blair White's videos, right? So it's like you're always, every time you bring up a source to me, it's an anti-trans source. So I know why you're feeling all this confusion. And for somebody to say like that, that you've questioned your gender enough that you were like, I'm going to take a test that's a like, am I a transgender test, right? For you to have been in that kind of questioning state before, but then to have been exposed to that type of harmful rhetoric, all of that anti-trans rhetoric, like it just makes me concerned of like, you know, of like the impact that it would have on you versus like, here, I'll make a recommendation, because, what was her name? Thedra asked me earlier for a book recommendation. I feel bad because I should have said this one right off the bat. I highly recommend you go get a book called Gender Trouble by Judith Butler and take a look at that book. Judith does a great job of going over how we understand gender as a social construct and the like kind of like how we've understood it traditionally and the trajectory it's going like toward the future, like what we can look at, how we can better understand each other, and like understand the concept of gender, period. And she argues from it from a like intersectional feminist standpoint. It's a really good book. And I would highly recommend you to take a look at that sort of material so you can see like where people who actually are like in related fields who are respected by the others within like this field of psychology that study this, what are their opinions on this? Not just what is Blair White's opinion, what is Ray Blanchard's opinion, what's basically like a lineup of like the rogues gallery of anti-trans dickheads. You know what I mean?
Okay, gender trouble, feminine. Okay, I got it. Okay,
Yeah.
it's added
By
in my shopping list now.
by Judith Butler. I highly recommend you taking a look at that because I really think that like you're halfway there. You know what I mean? Like you're asking all the questions, you are looking for material. It's like I just feel like if you were just given like sources that basically like could better explain it from an academic standpoint than I can explain it. Like all I can like offer you is my like colloquial understanding, just being a trans person, being in the community and seeing how other people interact with NB people, then moving on to like neopronouns and that type of stuff, and then talking to my spouse and learning kind of like how they experience their gender. Like that's all I can go on. But if you feel like you have to be convinced by like academic research, then Butler is a really good place to start.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I because you because you mentioned presuppositionalism earlier, and I that's something I had in my mind too. So when I heard about before I knew about the end of gender, YouTube recommend me based on what I look at the issue. They actually recommend Abigail Shrier first. I did not. I choose not to buy her book because based on the fact that she was a journalist, she's not a scientist. So that's why I don't usually want to base my opinion on someone else, report. I mean, even though the report is accurate. So I don't watch Ben Shapiro either. I never care about what conservatives say about this thing because if they saying because they have some sort of religious ideology, then that's not good. to trust them. So I tend to find scientists who actually know what they're talking about. And of course, I guess you can say this is argument from authorities. I tend I trust the words of the people who have a specialty in this field.
Well, it can, right? It can be a fallacy argument from authority if you're basically like citing an insufficient authority or someone who like is not an expert in like the specific field that like you're citing them for, like the whole like whatever people say, like, oh, 9 out of 10 dentists think that you should use this lawn service, and it's like, well, who cares what dentists think about lawn service, right?
Yeah.
But I would caution you. I would point out that Deborah So and Ray Blanchard are both discredited within the relative fields that they claim to be experts in. Like, Blanchard literally damaged the entire field of sexology. Part of the reason why sexology is not taken serious anymore as a as an area of psychology that like we put a lot of weight behind is partially because of the work that he did. That's how damaging it was, because a lot of people were like, sharing his work. They're like, oh, it's peer reviewed and it's being cited here, there, and the other. But then other scientists came along, other psychologists that also did really good work, and they recognized that, well, wait a minute, like all of this stuff that he's saying is like largely nonsense. Why was this published and legitimized? And then when all of that information ended up coming out, that turns out it actually was bullshit. He damaged that entire field of science. And Deborah So has like literally nothing to her name to be considered an expert in anything other than the fact that like she managed to get a degree. But if you look at her career basically is she got a degree and then she's been embroiled in controversy ever since then. She has never contributed anything meaningful to the field that she purports to be an expert in, which is really ironic considering that somebody would say, I'm an expert, but they've never contributed anything other than like papers that have caused controversy, so that she could then turn around and pull a Jordan Peterson. She's famous for being canceled. That's literally it. At least Jordan Peterson seems like he knows what he's talking about when it comes specifically to psychology, certain areas of it, that is. Deborah So doesn't even have that.
Hmm.
So that's what I was saying earlier. Like, I was kind of concerned just in the sources that you were citing, because it's like all of these are anti-trans, like very well-known anti-trans sources. But in like Blanchard's case, he's absolutely disgraced. And when it comes to Deborah So, like it's the same type of thing. The only reason why people know her name is because she did a this like kind of speaking tour where she went around saying that, oh, she got canceled by the woke this, that, and the other for her controversial opinions on trans people. Like, she's not allowed to say those things. When in actuality, it's like, well, not only do you have like ridiculous opinions when it comes to trans people, she's also like not really an expert. Like, it's like what expert papers, like what does she cite to point to say I'm an expert when it comes to transgender people? And it's a book that she wrote herself. That's like, it's like, okay, why should we care? Like, you're just spewing anti-trans rhetoric. Anyway, you get the point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For in the case of Blanchard, I mentioned it to you, but I don't usually I did not actually read his study, but I read the book from Michael Bailey, but it was like long time ago, so I did not really delve into it because I'm not really interested in like sexuality, like paraphilia stuff. So I don't really care. So I'm more interested in like the gender identity because it seems more fascinating to me.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with exploring those issues and thinking about it and kind of like like talking with members of the trans community and doing some self exploration, which it sounded like you did. It's just that I kind of feel like if you were in a more vulnerable headspace at one point in time, then it could have been pretty hard on you to hear and read the things that like Blair was saying or that Blanchard was producing or people like Deborah So, whatever else. um even like even myself, like uh just being exposed to transphobia and plain bigotry like constantly, sometimes it can wear you down. And that's why like a lot of people put like content warnings and stuff like when I publish this segment, I'm gonna have to put like content warnings in front of it because we've talked about a lot of like anti-trans topics. And if if somebody's watching this and they don't have like the spoons to deal with it, I don't want to like put them in like such a bad headspace just because like transphobia is so prevalent on all these social media sites and everything else. And it's the same handful of like ghouls that are spreading this misinformation about people like us.
So do you mind telling me like um when does the anti-trans movement seem to be more prevalent than before? I never see it until like
Yeah.
2 years ago.
All right,
So
hold
I don't
hold
know
that
when it started.
hold that thought for 1 second. I've got to run to the bathroom. I've been streaming for like almost 3 hours.
Okay, yeah,
I'll be back in one moment.
yeah.
All right, I'm back.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. It's just
Oh, no
been streaming
worry.
so much. Yeah. All right. So where we left off at, you were asking about let's see, you were asking about why does the anti-trans movement only like suddenly seem like it's gained notoriety? Like why the push now?
Yes, I was aware of the discrimination against trans people before, but it seems to be more like uh, case by case or like locally, but now it seems to be really high. And at the same time, I see the rise of um, you know like what you mentioned earlier, rapid onset gender dysphoria and transition transitioning children. I wonder if that somehow connect to that the anti-trans movement.
I would say definitely not. It's the all right. So a lot of there's a lot of different aspects to this. One would be one would be like we have a modern right wing reactionary movement that's like basically like directly become agitated number one, with the rise of fascism in this country, such as the presidency of Donald Trump. I would say that gay marriage successfully getting passed basically like convinced a lot of conservatives that that was no longer a point that they could argue anymore, so that they had to go back and they had to find like what was the next fight going to be. Then you have a conglomerate, which is basically like you have celebrities, you have like the LGB group. So now you have like groups of bigots that are forming together. You've got spokespeople that they have, they have like authors and Schreier. They've got fake experts like Deborah So, and they're not to mention all the different YouTube conservative personalities that will sit there and spread anti-trans bigotry. So this ends up being a huge problem, where it's like it's not just one thing of like, well, how come it's like just suddenly become an issue now? It's like, well, it's a complicated question, right? There's a multi-pronged attack going on this, and you even end up with strange bedfellows, where you end up having, I think the what was it? There's like the gender critical movement or whatever has been liking and sharing posts that were like based on Nazis. Like they were liking and sharing fascist posts and people that like were literally proud to call themselves like Nazis, neo-Nazis, because they have been so convinced and demented by people like J.K. Rowling and stuff like that, that women like as a category are in danger of going like extinct because of trans people. So you end up having like a very like hysterical like trans panic.
Oh, I see. So there are many factors, but not just one thing.
Right, and there's so much misinformation out there that like unless you really know what you're looking for, it's very easy to get like swayed by this stuff, or to get like get taken in by it, where you don't even recognize that like you've bought into like really like transphobic talking points. And I'm not saying that I'm not saying that every single person, well, I don't know, I have a hard time believing that people that are gender critical at this point are not aware that it's bullshit. Because specifically like the type of stuff that they share, like the I shared a little like infograph earlier that was like it was almost like a meme, right? And it was because there were like somebody listed off the stuff that like the LGB alliance, the LGB support versus like what what Stonewall supports. And it's like Stonewall's positions are all like pro gay marriage and all this stuff, and it's like every single position that you would think that like a gay advocate group would support, like gay marriage and all this kind of stuff, the LGBT alliance is like against every single one of them. Like it seems like the LGB's only their only talking points are anti-trans stuff. Like they don't do any gay activism other than hating on gay people.
Yeah, I heard Katie mention that
Or
on her
trans people, sorry.
Tough Word episodes.
Right. Well, and she's correct.
Yeah. I don't have a opinion about marriage, and um, I'm pretty sure you're aware of the case of Baker Jack Phillips, right?
Of what?
So do you remember the case of Baker Jack Phillips in Colorado?
Are you talking like the bakers?
yeah, the baker who refused to make a cake for the gay couple, and then he would sue, and then later on he refused to bake a cake for a trans woman, and he would sue again.
Yeah, sure. What about him?
I mean, I'll talk to you about that another time. Yeah, because I'm trying to understand the the right of trans, anti-trans movement, and I wonder, do you think it has something to do with the fact that maybe people on the anti-trans side, they are confused more than they are scared?
I mean, I would say no. I would say it's also it would also be relevant to point out that uh the um the trans woman that was suing him, she's a
Yeah.
lawyer, and she's suing him because he explicitly said that he would make the cake in the colors that she requested up until, or his whatever his assistant did, up until she said that the reason why she wanted it was for a trans, like her celebrating her transition or something like that. And then they turned around and said that they would not make the cake, even though they did not have to write anything on it. They did not have to decorate it. All they had to do was bake the cake in the colors, which is basically just pink and blue and white, which was what they already said that they would do. That's why she's suing them. That's why she
Yeah.
has legal grounds as like an open shut case. It's like it's because in the previous case, what they cited as far as like the reasoning that the baker had a right to not bake the cake for the gay couple, was because it was like they couldn't be compelled, number one, to make art, but number two was that they couldn't make, they were trying to argue that you can't make them put the male, like the two men, like decorations on top of the cake, because that's
Yeah.
against their religion, clearly. But the problem is with the trans woman, is that this has nothing to do with putting any decorations on or whatever. Like, she did not ask them to write, I support trans rights. She did not ask them to put like I don't know, a before and after photo or something. You know what I mean? Like, they
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
ask for anything. She didn't ask for anything like that. She just wanted the cake that they said that they would already make. But because they are refusing to make the cake now, and they're basically citing explicitly like they're only not making the cake because she's trans. That's why it's like more of an open shut case, and that's also why it is discrimination.
Yeah.
Hopefully that kind of like answers the baker's question.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I do have something thinking about that. But I'll say it for another time. Um, so I want to ask you about people who are on the anti-trans are more confused and scared because the information changes so quickly, and even I got confused too. Before I only know that sex um is binary, right? So either you male female, and before that, at that time I learned about X is a woman and I mean female, and XY is male. And later on, it's become more complicated, and so we turn to whether you produce gametes based on either you have, you're
Right.
mature,
I know you said
yeah,
that you didn't have a lot of time. I don't want to get like too much, like front load too much into this. But what I would say is that science is always like updating, and we always find out like new information, whatever else. And it's just like I was saying earlier with human sexuality, where we thought that there was only like straight people. Then it was like, oh well, there's apparently gay people. Then it's like, okay, well actually human sexuality is like there's also bisexual and pansexual. Then we found out that there's, ace people and demisexual and all this other kind of stuff. So it's like we adjust our knowledge as we gain new information. And a lot of people already knew, like, obviously there's many sets of chromosome compilations besides just XX and XY. That's been known for a very long time. It's just that it wasn't like a common talking point used against a minority community, so it was never really like relevant to bring up in like public, like common public discourse, which now obviously like more people have brought it up. So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
why I would say that you probably did go from a time where you were like, oh, it's just XX and XY. Then you find out that there's like more than 16 different chromosomal like combinations. Then on top of that, like there's a bunch of other like, there's so many similarities between like people's bodies that it's more and more difficult to pinpoint what exactly makes someone, a man, woman, whatever. And that is exactly why gender is a social construct.
Yeah, you're right, Zoe. I think um, this is just my personal speculation on this issue. Like I think conservatives um, eventually cannot have to accept the fact that like gay people like me. It's just the way we are. I cannot. They cannot change that, and conversion therapy will not work. It just do harm, right? So I think they sort of ever since the gay marriage was legal, will become legal. I don't really hear them talk about that so much anymore. But I guess because now we hop to the transgender topic, and the argument that there is no such thing as biological sex, or sex is not binary. So I think that's probably they said, okay, I already believe that people born this way. Now this is something else. What am I supposed to do? So
Well,
I think that's why they're not on board with this trends because of that.
yeah, the problem, you're already going to run into the problem. Like, there's already a Texas politician who's pushing back on the Obergefell decision. He wants Texas to pass a law similar to how they did abortion and basically overturn the Obergefell decision in Texas and say that, that in Texas alone, gay marriage will be null and void. And that was what my point was as soon as they get done targeting trans rights, they will turn right around and go after gay marriage again. And a lot of the gay people that are arguing against trans rights, that are the LGBT dipshits, they are going to God forbid, like another Trump or even a worse fascist gets into office and finally manages to make being trans illegal, or they try to define us out of definition, out of existence, whatever else. They will turn, as soon as they feel like they're done with trans people, they will turn right around and ban gay marriage again, and all of a sudden start pushing gay people underground again. And if you want to if you think that that's exaggeration, look at what's happening in Poland right now. Right now they are talking about making literally what they're calling anti-LGBT ideology zones. And by anti-LGBT ideology zones, they mean areas of the city and towns and stuff where gay people are not allowed to be. Their rhetoric,
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's just
I
increasing and getting worse.
Yeah, I saw that on Vice channel, and it was really bad. Yeah.
Right, but a lot of these people, they're like, oh, the LGBT alliance just seem like they make so much sense. It's like y'all know like what's coming next, right? Like the moment that they successfully are able to, get rid of trans people, they will be coming for gay people, and this is something that like we cannot ignore. And that's why I push so hard on it whenever it's like it frustrates me to no end. It's like because the people that ought to know better other members of the gay community, some of them end up being like, hey, well, I don't know about these trans rights thing. And it's like, what, like, dude, you're next. It's like, you better
Yeah.
hope that they aren't able to get rid of trans people, because the next people that are going to be gone are going to be the gays.
Yeah.
And we have the historical precedents to see like what happens in those types of situations, and we can look right now to Poland to say, if they had their way, there would not only be the anti-trans zones, but there would be the anti-LGBT zones.
Yeah. So earlier when I asked you about the issue with the with the baker, I do think that there, because I'm an immigrant in this country. So, and what I see is that people here, they believe in freedom, and they also believe in compromise. And I think that's just where I guess I'm more lenient towards conservatives when it comes to people like me, than others, because I feel like if I push them too far, then they can snap back really badly. So
But the very ironic thing of you saying that is the conservatives are the ones that want to like get rid of immigrants. Right? Like that they not only would not accept you because you're gay, but they actively want to like deport all immigrants back to their like whatever their perceived country of origin is, even if that person was like born and raised in America. They already want to get rid of immigrants. So I see it's very weird to be like, oh, I'm sympathetic toward the conservative argument here when they're the ones that want to harm you. Which is what my point was. Just like they're the ones that want to harm gay people, they're the ones that would want to get rid of immigrants. And they fearmonger about this like all the time.
Zoe, I guess I'm guilty in this because in a way I feel like I'm a little more privileged than other ethnicities, because when I lived here like for 18 years, and I only encountered one racist incident. Most of the time, people tend to be cool with me, and the media seem to portray, at least on the conservative side, they tend to have more respect for Asian community than like African American people. So I guess that's what I tend to be a little bit more lenient towards the conservatives.
But
Doesn't mean I agree with them, but just
don't you think like if you recognize that you have that privilege, like number one, like you definitely ought to recognize that you've got that ability to be like that right now in the current day, like Asians are not like I wouldn't say they're as poorly treated as some of the other minority communities, but you can still find, I mean, like there was the shooter right in Atlanta that was like the Asian spa shooter, right? Where he went to like 3 or 4 different like specifically like Asian spas and just killed all the women there. So there are still definitely like hate crimes that are done against Asian Americans and that sort of thing. I think that like that we've got to be cognizant of these sorts of things, and that hopefully that you would recognize that if somebody is already petty enough that they're going to like that they would harm some other immigrants, once they're able to get rid of the other immigrants and you're the only immigrant again, like whose ire do you think will they'll come for next?
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why like I recognize that if people have such a hard time with non-binary people and they take such issue with neopronouns and all this other type of stuff, I know that those people are only like half a step away from being like, oh, you know what, all trans, like no trans person is acceptable. And it's a slippery slope. And I know, like, you could say, oh, well, there's no guarantee that that would happen, Zoe. And it's like, it happens often enough that it is a legitimate concern that people in our community have got to be aware of. Where
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, so I'll save it for the next time because the pronoun is something I would love to. I also have question for you too, but I have to go to bed now. So another
sure.
time I will ask you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
well, so
Zoe.
we've talked for a while. Yep. It's always good to hear from you. Hopefully, you'll think about what I said and check out that book by Butler.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
All right, see you.
All
Bye.
right. Talk to you later.
Yeah, bye.
Tell me pretty lies, look me in the face. Tell me that you love me, even if it's fake.